everyone. I'm Mike Koss, founder of Caregivers, and welcome to another podcast. I'm excited today to introduce an old friend and colleague of mine who he and I reconnected recently, Steve Cowherd. I'm going to ask Steve to introduce himself in a minute, but Steve and I go back a few years at our old company. I should say my old company. Steve is still working for them. And we're going to talk a little bit about his life today and how he's adapting and able to succeed in the role that he's been in. But Steve and I worked together. Didn't get a chance, Steve, to work too much with you, but I always enjoyed it immensely when we did. Steve was one of the technical guys at Flexera, one of the smart guys. And we leaned pretty heavily on him. And I was quite surprised and saddened fairly recently, to learn, Steve, that you suffered a traumatic brain injury about, I think, 5 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And it just hit home pretty hard for me because our audience knows that my son, Ruth, and my son, Kevin, who is 37, suffered a traumatic brain injury at the age of 15 back in 2001. So I did not realize that you had an accident and you'd been dealing with it and actually trying to continue to work. So it was an interesting reconnection. In fact, I wrote a little article about that conversation. In fact, it was published on February 1st of this year on Caregivers, but it really struck me, Steve, a lot of the similarities between what you've been dealing with and what our Kevin has been dealing with. And I just thought the more you and I spoke, you have been so amazing and inspirational, and you've got a lot to share. And here we are today, and I want to share it with the audience. So our plan, we're going to see how this flows today, but our plan is to do this in 3 parts. I want the audience to get to know you, Steve, a little bit more on a personal level and describe some of the things you're dealing with. And then we're going to segue to some lessons learned. You've actually given this speech, from what I understand, at the traumatic brain injury, the organization at a conference. So we're very appreciative of your time here, and you've got some lessons learned. So we're going to get into that. That may not be until podcast number 2, part 2. And we may even split this thing into part 3 as we go to provide our audience with enough depth on your experiences. So with that said, Steve, welcome. Thank you for joining. And I'd love to turn it over to you and tell the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and some of the things that happened in your life fairly recently, and how you and I kind of got here to have this conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. And I thank you for the opportunity. I've been, as part of healing, we have to learn to give back some too. And I'm doing this as part of recovery, and hope that what I'm going to speak about will help other people recovering from traumatic brain injuries or brain dysfunctions in general. You'll see. I know we say that all brain injuries are different and they're like fingerprints, and they most certainly are. But there are lots of common ground that I found going through support groups and meeting with brain injury survivors at all level, from people that can't take care of themselves to highly functional people with brain injury. There are similarities in things that we deal with every day across the board. And so I'm going to try to talk a little bit about myself today, and then we'll get into some of those key areas, hopefully, in our future podcast.
That's great. That's great. So Steve, tell me a little bit first. Let's talk about your family a little bit. You have a
Yeah.
wife, of course, and
Yeah,
she's
yeah, I have a wife. I have five grandkids. I even have a slide that will kind of show you that. My name is Steve Cowherd. I'll be 60 years old as of August 2023. And I've been a TBI survivor since 2018. I'm happily married. I'm a father of three, grandfather to five, and four of those were born during my brain injury.
wow.
Uh, Currently work full time as a consultant, a software trainer, and I'm also an artist and a photographer. And uh, yeah, I put on this diagram a little bit about what most people see. I work every day, have worked since 2 weeks or 3 weeks after my accident. Most people see I look fine. You smile and laugh. When I interacted with you, Mike, even at work, I that was during my brain injury. I had
Yep.
already had that early on. People think I make jokes. I'm social, and I excel at my work. Actually, since my brain injury, I think my work has gotten better. Some cases it might have knocked some sense into me, I guess.
That's great. Well, I know you were a lot of fun to work with, and the job itself, just like a lot of careers, especially in technology, can be highly stressful. So I've always admired your humor, and we had a little fun along the way, right? That's important.
Mhm. Some of the things that most people don't see with traumatic brain injuries, because a lot of the symptoms and issues that people deal with are hidden. You don't see them; they're invisible. Some of the things I deal with chronic fatigue still to this day. I have difficulties processing. I can't process sensory input as fast as people want to give it to you these days. I have pretty bad memory loss, confusion often, poor concentration. I have sleep disturbances. Since my head injury, I underwent a bunch of testing. I found that I have severe to profound hearing loss at high decibels.
Wow.
They're trying to tell me that it was hereditary, and I haven't been able to hear my whole life. It was uncovered during the brain injury. Nevertheless, most things can get exacerbated with brain injury. So I could have learned how to deal with the hearing all over the course of my life. The mild hearing was hereditary, and when I had my brain injury, it's now severe to profound. Profound hearing loss is considered deafness. It's not that I don't hear tones or sounds. I don't hear high decibels. And so the higher decibels are where consonants come from in words. And so I often spend the day working the word jumble. So I am only hearing things. I've got good hearing devices, hearing aid devices, and they help a bunch. Uh, I have balance issues. I have balance issues till to today. Some days I'm great, and some days I can't walk up and down the steps to work.
Mhm.
I've just been fortunate enough. Our state has a brain injury trust, and actually that trust has just installed lift chairs in my home. So as I age and as things continue to progress, that I'll still be able to remain in my home. So very
You're
thankful for
thinking
that.
ahead. That's
Yeah.
that's great to hear. Yep.
Yeah. I've been diagnosed with since my head injury. I with ADHD and dyslexia. They're both hereditary dysfunctions, neurological dysfunctions, but most likely I've had them all my life and learned to deal with them, and they were severely exacerbated during when I had my head injury, and this is probably the two things that I'm struggling with the most. I since COVID, we've gone from I was a consultant and I spoke with people and we conversed and we consulted. Now everything's written word and text message and stuff like that. And I have a really hard time. I read at a very infantile level, and I have very difficult times typing and spelling. So
Mhm.
dealing with those now. Executive dysfunction, you know, self-regulation, those kind of things, those all come with ADHD as well, but they come with head injuries. And so you can
Sure.
kind of see that some of these hereditary neurological dysfunctions kind of look like brain injuries too, and can kind of get worse during brain injuries. I've undergone a pretty much a complete personality change. The people that knew me will tell you that I am a very different person from 5 years ago. I am totally different in my thought processes, my interests, and everything completely changed. And some I think might have changed for the better, and
Yeah.
some, but dealing with that much change uh, is nevertheless very difficult. I
Every day, I'm sure is a very different day, right? No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
and probably a lot of unpredictability about
Uh,
it.
yeah, oh, absolutely. One of my biggest issues that I struggle with is personal regulation. I have severe anxiety, depression, to the point that I've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder. And
Wow.
I go weekly to EMDR therapy to help try to learn how to keep myself regulated in that. The first year and a half, I suffered with suicidal ideation on a daily basis, three
Mm.
times a day, to the point that I ended up on a 5150 hold, psychiatric hold. Uh, uh, and that's when I kind of charted my uh, I need to take a hold of this and get a handle on it. Yeah,
Dig
yeah,
out a bit, right?
and you know, it took me over a year and a half to figure that out. I've got what's called biocular vision dysfunction, and so my eyes don't align. Uh, and uh, and if you get to a certain distance, one eye quits working. So I work on a computer all day long. Guess what? That distance is what a computer is. And so one eye had been processing things for quite some time,
Sure.
and to the point that I would reach sheer exhaustion by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Saw a very good optometrist that's NORA certified. They deal with neurological and brain injuries and how eyes are affected by that. And I got fitted with prism lenses, some binasal inclusions, given a whole bunch of therapy to do, and it's much better. It's manageable now, but without glasses, I luge down the hallway. I spent the first year and a half luging down the hallway, bouncing off from one side to the other in kind of a controlled stagger. So I also lost my sense of smell and a good deal of my taste because taste is driven from smell. I have recovered very little smell. Taste, you can develop some over time and retrain that. That is getting better, but smell is a big challenge. I can tell you, my wife is gone. She allowed me to stay by myself, probably the first mistake. And I cooked some chicken and I couldn't smell it burning. I happened to be talking to her on the phone and said, and remembered that I forgot to eat. And I went in, you know, I could have burned the house down. I don't smell those things,
Sure.
you know, so it, it, it,
Scary.
it can be
Yeah.
traumatic. And we just come up on our summer, and I have the most severe heat sensitivity. I just if I get hot and overheated, sweating, and I go into a complete emotional and cognitive meltdown. I to the point that I have a like a neck air conditioner that I wear around my neck. It's got a cooling plate on the back and fans in the front. I can kind of stay regulated. So I deal with all of these things, and they are hidden to all. Nobody knows about them unless you talk about them. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Well, wow, Steve, it's incredible, and thank you for sharing with us. I mean, this so many things come to mind as you're sharing with us. Number one, it's obvious, right? Your life changed like the snap of a finger, right? Once this accident happened, and I won't get into detail or ask you about that unless you want to talk about it, right?
mm-hmm.
You know what happened, but the bottom line is it happened, and you've been dealing with some very significant challenges since. Um, the other thing that strikes me, and when you and I reconnected a few months back, and you shared this slide with me, and I looked at it and I said, wow, this is an extreme, to me, this is an extremely helpful slide that I think anyone with any kind of disability, right, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or autism or whatever the case may be, this is something good to take inventory of, because, you know, again, a little selfishly speaking for a minute, my son Kevin, our son Kevin, with a traumatic brain injury, I see a lot of these things that you're talking about. We see a lot of that in Kevin. But the
Mm-hmm.
other interesting thing that strikes me, Steve, is you could really take Kevin's would probably be almost inverted to what yours are, right? So
Mm-hmm.
our Kevin, when what you see, what people see, they see he's not mostly nonverbal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they assume, they assume he doesn't have the intellect and doesn't understand what others are saying, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, above the line, he does get quite anxious publicly sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because he remembers his past, and he was a wonderful student, a top-notch student. He was an athlete. He played sports. He had a normal social life. So he gets very anxious publicly. So a lot of people don't know quite how to handle him. So his below the line, what most people don't see, kind of things that you have, they would be a little bit different if I were to list them out for Kevin, right? What they don't see is he's a very kind and loving person,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's got a big
Yeah.
heart. He still loves to play sports. He's still good at that. He loves to spend time with his little nieces and nephews, right? Our grandkids, and things like that. So I share that, and I was just so impressed with this slide. I've seen it in business, right? I mean, it's kind of the old
Mm-hmm.
iceberg one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
There's an
you'll
iceberg,
see it. Yeah, you'll
but
see it on brain injury sites
yeah,
everywhere. It's not something I came up with,
yeah,
obviously,
but
but
it's a
I
great
just took
tool.
the concept and found it to be a really good way to communicate exactly what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to be able, right, to communicate and to share with others, right? I mean,
Yep.
some people, want to hold that, information a little more private. I'm kind of the opposite end. I would like people to know more about our son Kevin, right?
Yeah.
So that because many of them ask, they get frustrated. They don't know what the best way to communicate with him is. So I think a tool and a template like this is good for a lot of folks to
Mm-hmm.
sit down, take inventory, whether that person that has the brain injury or disability is the one taking inventory and working on this, or if it's their caregiver or parent, right,
Yeah.
that's helping put this together. So I really appreciate you sharing this.
Yeah.
And it's causing me to think, and something we're going to use going forward, and I encourage others to as well.
Yeah, yeah. I even take this kind of even a step further. I have a medical ID alert bracelet. Says I have a traumatic brain injury, and I have a card in my wallet, and the card in my wallet explains to them what I deal with and how best to approach me.
Yeah,
If you're very anxious, which I am, and you're approached by a law enforcement, or you've forgotten to pay for something and walked out of the store with it or something,
sure.
how your approach can direct that outcome. And so when something's happened to you, it's hard to remember all of this stuff. And so I wear a medical alert bracelet and keep a card in my wallet just for that reason alone.
It's smart.
People know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so smart. I mean, you mentioned law enforcement. I mean, in this day and age, right, in our society today, it's pretty scary because you don't, most people don't get the benefit of the doubt when they're out in public, right? And
Hmm.
you're at risk and potentially at danger. So
Yep.
I,
Yep.
I think it's very
Absolutely.
smart. Yep.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Uh,
So how is the family? Tell me a little bit about the family on how they've adapted and learned to.
I got to tell you, my wife has embraced the caregiver role, and she seems to. I see in brain injury support groups and all of that kind of stuff where people struggle with well, she's really a caregiver, not a wife anymore, and that kind of stuff. For the past 5 years, she can play both roles, and I got to tell you, tonight she's taking other brain injury survivors to a support group
Wow.
meeting, and she is very active in the brain injury community. She just did a caregiver panel conference, and she was one of the panelists. And I need to get you the link to that. It's quite
Sure.
encouraging. It was all caregivers in how they need to care for themselves and make things better. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you've got one heck of a wife and one heck of an advocate, Steve. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, she does a good job. We built a great support family. My kids are great, but it doesn't come easy. It has to come with clear and concise communication. If you
sure.
try to hide behind your disabilities, you do yourself a disservice.
Right.
I perfectly. I hid behind my disabilities for 2 years and ended up at probably what I have referred to as the basement of rock bottom.
Yeah.
But I found that being open and honest about it is a relief. Most people are compassionate and try to understand. Sometimes people just don't understand. I got to tell you, Mike, there's things about this I don't understand to this day myself, and so I have to I have to kind of look at that when I expect people that haven't been introduced to this or been through it for 5 years, how I can expect them to understand. So
Sure.
it has to be a two-way street from a communication perspective.
Well,
Definitely.
you're always seeking to learn. So that is, it sounds like it's something that you had to work at a little bit, right? You had to
Hmm.
get through some of the drastic ups and downs and figure out, okay,
Hmm.
at that point, it sounds like at some point, right, you almost have a choice. All right, what am I going to do going forward here? How am I going to handle this? And it's extremely admirable, Steve, to see that you've taken this thing by the horns, not only to help yourself and help others around you understand, how to communicate and best deal with you, right? But now you're going out and you're helping others. So that's incredible.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that personal side. And yeah, we could back
Yeah.
up here and
Yeah.
let's talk about the presentation and how you're going to share this knowledge, and we're going to parse this out a little bit into a multi-part series, likely.
Perfect. Today, I'm not going to overwhelm you with a bunch of information. We're just trying to lay the groundwork for what we think might be two more segments here. You'll get the topics of those segments. They're something that's near and dear to all people that suffer from neurological dysfunctions. It just and as a matter of fact, you yourself, without any, can learn from the things that I'm going to talk about. My goal for the presentation is to tell my story. I need to learn to tell this better and communicate it clearly and concisely if I expect people to understand and believe me. And it is a work in progress. This is my first a real big attempt at it has been this presentation. I've spoke at a couple of support groups giving this, and I think it was met with tremendous success, and I want to continue to share things and continue to expand on it. One of the biggest things this promotes is self-care. There's so many things we don't know, so many things we can't know, so many things we can't afford.
Sure.
The lack of resources is unreal, but self-care is important and can get you down the road a lot further. TBI survivors are a mighty group. In the U.S. alone, I think the last CDC study I saw was there's 5.9 million people in the U.S. alone living with disabilities from a traumatic brain injury. I happen to live in the state that does everything better, Kentucky, and we have. That's why we have a TBI trust. We have double the national average of traumatic brain injuries in Kentucky. Don't know why.
Wow, that's
it's
that's
double the
interesting.
national average, and the national average is shocking to you. And we'll get into some background information about how big and how underserved survivors really are. And I hope this encourages other TBI survivors to share things that they've learned along the way. I've learned so much from other TBI survivors. As a matter of fact, when I got out of the basement of rock bottom, I hired a life coach that is a TBI survivor. She'd been through, she's already traveled the roads that I've been down, and it helps you learn a lot faster. If we communicate, we are a mighty group, 5.9 million people. If we all start sharing, we can raise public awareness so people are more understanding. And what you share, you can't imagine how many other survivors it might help. So
absolutely, we could learn from each other, and then down the line, certainly the hope is to get more resources, right? From different outlets in that, because there are too many gaps out there for a variety of disabilities, certainly for TBI.
What this presentation is not, I'm not giving medical advice. Everything will be good common sense and well researched. I'm not giving medical advice. I leave that to the professionals. And sometimes I don't think the professionals know what they're doing about this stuff. So, and we'll talk about that as
Steve, I'm sorry to talk over you here. I'll tell you that line when I think about it. Last year at some point, I actually wrote an article about some of the things that we experienced, right, when Kevin was first going through his traumatic, after he suffered his traumatic brain injury. I mean, it just, the professionals, you need them. They're wonderful. They're incredible. But at the end of the day, you're your own quarterback, or your family is the team, right? And the best advocate, because we kind of went down a couple different roads, frankly, that we probably went a little bit too far down the roads and then had to pull back a little bit, especially on prescribed medication, right? I mean,
Yep.
doctors these days are quick to prescribe, and in fairness to them, they're only, quite often, they're just trying to treat the symptom and not necessarily looking for the underlying causes. So that's
you're exactly right. The medical profession, in general, I'm not going to say as a whole, are trained to treat the acute phase of your brain injury. Is your brain no longer bleeding? Are you improving cognitively? But you got nothing for the ongoing resources that you'll have to deal with the rest of your life, unfortunately. Something else I want to, this is not a plea for sympathy or special treatment. I have a great life and consider myself very fortunate that through the support of others, I've been able to develop the skills it takes to live with ongoing effect of a TBI and thrive in the workplace. I'm happy where I am. I'd be happy to retire. And I've got a date set, and that's August 9th, 2025, and it's coming. It's in a couple of years. I'm going to hang my hat up then, if the good Lord lets me get to that point. And so I feel very fortunate, and I try to work being an advocate for people that aren't as fortunate from a brain injury perspective. Just to kind of set the stage about how, if you're new to brain injury, or maybe even not new to brain injury, I've got some facts there that you might not know, and just set the basis. A traumatic brain injury is an altercation or alteration in your brain function or your brain pathology. It's caused by an external force. So blunt force trauma to the head is what a traumatic brain injury is. There are all kinds of other brain injuries. I have a traumatic brain injury, and to be honest with you, I fell off of a Segway scooter in front of my house. I've wrecked motorcycles before. I've done some pretty crazy stuff, and never thought a thing about it. And I slipped on the scooter on a Sunday afternoon, and all this dysfunction was handed to me at age 55.
Wow.
Wow. Kind of crazy. TBI can affect the lives of all ages and backgrounds. It's equal opportunity. It's the most equal opportunity thing you can have these days. Sure. If you have a brain injury, you can be a millionaire and you can be a small child. It has no discrimination. If you this pound or so, or whatever it weighs, of mass that floats in liquid that's attached to our shoulders, we don't do enough to protect that. No two brain injuries are exactly the same. There's different severities, and sometimes severity has no bearing on what your handicaps are. So you can
just
have a
like
mild...
you and I spoke earlier and talked about the differences between our son Kevin and what you're experiencing.
You can have a mild brain injury to a severe brain injury, and the amount of dysfunction on the mild brain injury might be more than somebody that's had a severe brain injury. It's just you're scrambling billions of circuits, and I refer to it as just imagine you depend on your computer for a living, or for functioning in general, and you pour a Coke in it, and it comes back up, but weird things start happening.
That's right.
It's very similar. The effects of of a traumatic brain injury are complex, and they vary from person to person. So here's some facts that I saw from a human rights citation to the United States of America. Uh, Traumatic brain injury contributes to more death and disability globally than any other traumatic incident. Each year, there are approximately 69 million reported cases worldwide. That's
Wow.
69 million cases worldwide. The numbers are probably much higher than that due to underreporting in the United States of America. It just wasn't reported. I've learned that I've probably had many traumatic brain injuries over my lifetime. I've totaled 9 cars, and I've had all kinds of things where I've got a bump on the head, and those things can and will add up.
Right, over time, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
kind of like a concussion, right? For
yeah, yeah,
a sports player, an athlete.
yeah. Brain injury is the leading cause of death and disability among our young people. You know that very well. You had a young kid ready to go. I mean, he was living his best life, and the rug gets yanked out from under so many of our youth these days. And in fact, researchers refer to traumatic brain injury as a silent epidemic. Uh, and this is all from a human rights citation to the United States, but taken verbatim. I'm dyslexic. I can't type those kind of words. Take me a week and a half. So another thing that you'll notice, what's going on nowadays is, thanks to advances in medical knowledge, people who in the recent past would have just died because of a brain injury, they're now surviving. We have medical technology and ways that we're helping these people. But those people that are surviving, they are left with differing degrees of disability. Most insurance companies do not cover the many services and ongoing care needed to sustain an acceptable quality of life post TBI.
I
Period.
know that. We know that all too well, unfortunately. It's a shame, frankly.
Yeah,
But
yeah. This is all from that same human rights violation, by the way.
yeah,
This puts an undue financial burden and stress on the survivors and their families. So you are as affected by it as the person that it happened to. It's you all are living this, and in many cases, survivors don't even have options to even receive the services needed to sustain a basic quality of life that should be forwarded to all humans. And it's just the fact. Sometimes you just there's the resources aren't available. And I encourage anybody listening, try to get a 60-year-old adult tested for dyslexia. Kids can do it on the drive-through window, but an adult cannot. It's taken me. I've actually had to go to our state's vocational rehabilitation to help facilitate that. So it's kind of appalling. Uh,
sure.
uh,
Well, it's the challenge too, right? As I think you're saying, Steve. There's no real single source of information, and you have to dig on your own. And as older individuals, right? I'm in my mid-60s now. I mean, it's overwhelming, right?
mhm.
When you start digging into that, and we need help, right? We all need help trying to get the right care lined up.
Oh, absolutely. And just resources are not plentiful. Neuropsychological resources that every person with a brain injury needs, they just don't exist. It can take sometimes years to get a full neuropsych test done. They're so backed up. it's kind of shocking. I would think, well, that's exactly what I want to be, as one of those people, because I can make lots of money.
Right.
They don't have to worry for work, huh?
No, not one bit.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out.
So there are many other types of acquired brain injuries, strokes, seizures, tumors, those kind of things. They all come with the same dysfunctions. They're a brain injury in and of themselves. They're just acquired. It's something you acquire through a sickness or an illness or something like that. There's also hereditary neurodivergence now. ADHD, dyslexia, autism. My hearing loss is hereditary. My ADHD is hereditary. They're telling me my dyslexia is hereditary. And if they tell you it's hereditary, the insurance will tell you, well, you had that when you came to us, so that's pre-existing. We ain't paying for it.
Right. Oh yeah. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. And so they suffer from many of the same challenges as TBI survivors. So you'll hear me refer to neurodivergent people all the time. Also, if you got degenerative neurodiversities, Alzheimer's, MS, things like that. I have a friend that has MS, and I've learned so much from him. He's had it for 25 years, and how he has to treat these ups and downs and stuff. Like, it's all the same. We all got something scrambled in our head at some point in time.
Sure.
How it happened is irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Yep.
Well,
look, so I think we are on a slide here, Steve, that we're gonna tee up for the part 2 of our podcast here. But we want to give our audience here, give us a little 2-minute overview of what they should come back to learn. Right? You've got lessons learned here, 10 of them, and a lot of detail under them, and so let's get the audience lathered up and wanting to come back for part 2. What are we going to be talking about here?
Well, as I'm reading this and I say lessons learned, I should probably say lessons learning. I learn something new every day, and these things get me, and I still deal with each and every one of them every day. I don't want people to think I've got some kind of magic solution. I still deal with this every day.
Sure.
But these are things that we can promote self-care, and we can help ourselves in these areas. So, like areas about identifying your support team, having good, compassionate, caring caregivers. I can't tell you how hard it is to find a healthcare professional that will just listen, and that will treat what you're telling them and as information, and try to help. It's appalling the number of healthcare professionals saying, "Well, you're just not right. You're just not right." I've got more information about what's going on with me and them than them. Stopping and listening is how they can help me. Stopping and listening to how I'm describing things, not combating things or telling me there's something that they're not, because they're happening to me. I have over 50% of the cards. I have the information. And finding healthcare professionals that will listen is a bigger challenge than you think. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to promote learning how to tell your story, so you are better at explaining what's going on with you. You're more accurate. You're more precise. You have facts. You only get one chance sometimes to leave an impression.
I'm loving how you've developed your story, Steve. Keep going.
And this is my story. This is my work in progress. This is my lessons I'm learning, and I hope to learn from doing this, and I hope to do many more. I'm going to talk a lot about the importance of rest and nutrition. It's something we have completely in our control. Sleeping and eating.
Sure. Yep.
And what we intake into our bodies. We're putting what we intake into our bodies. So understanding what our bodies need from a rest and nutrition standpoint is important. You've got to understand your limitations now, and better yet, you've got to learn that you have limitations. Learn to accept that you have limitations.
Good point. Yep. It
It's
starts
very
there.
hard, very
Yep.
hard. Yeah, something I struggle with every day. I'm like, I used to do that. Damn it, I'm going to do it again today, and it just it doesn't happen. One of the biggest things, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a whole nother one of these just on this one topic because it affects everyone, and I call it resource management. Your brain only has so many cycles on a day, and you start at a disadvantage every day, and it takes it longer to recharge. You have to learn to manage your resources, what triggers things, what sucks resources, what provides resources, and there's no playbook for this. You learn the Wile E. Coyote method. You try something, it blows up on you, you try again, it's painful. So learning and putting some facts together about resource management can help, because if you're out of resources, you can't do any of these things on the screen. You're shut down.
Yep.
You're completely shut down. Talk a little bit about the importance of developing routine. Routine can really help with memory functions and help with self-regulation and all of those things. I'm in the technology industry. I've always used technology. I'm a big advocate of what the role of technology plays in my day-to-day life now. It's a dependency. We'll talk a little bit about
there's so much out there. It's
Yep.
hard to keep up with the technology trends, right? And so no, we're going to be interested to hear more on your take on things that can help.
And we'll talk a little bit about the responsible use of technology too. Technology can be a detriment to you if it's not used responsibly. This next one gets me every day, every hour, every day sometimes, and that's emotional regulation. How to keep yourself in check. I can't tell you how many times in the past 5 years I said to myself, did I really say that out loud?
That thought bubble just came out.
Came out loud. I sometimes my filters are just gone. I've learned how to apologize well.
Yeah.
Over the course of 5 years, you just can't let it get to you. But learning how to regulate yourself emotionally. I have 3 anxiety disorders. I have general anxiety disorder, I have panic disorder, and I have PTSD. And so emotional regulation, I'm on high alert. I'm DEFCON 3 or whatever it is. Every day I wake up like that. When I wake up in the morning, my resting heart rate is 100 or so. While I'm working, I'm at a resting heart rate of about 130. That's set still. I'm running. You just don't see me running. Yeah. And obviously I don't gain the benefits from running either.
I understand.
Talk a little bit about finding your passion or finding a new passion. I turned to art. I never did art prior to my head injury. During my head injury, I have digitally painted 1,400 images, and I can't tell you how many shirts I've tie-dyed. And you'll look at the stack ready to go behind me. I tie-dye them for special events. Yeah.
Yep. When you and I reconnected recently, Steve, I loved it. I told you about our Kevin. He really has been drawn to adult coloring books and all that. And, you showed me some of your stuff in the background there, and you've got. I love your Facebook post. You share some of your amazing work, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more on that when we get there.
Yeah. So finding your passion, it's one of those things that provides resources. Even though it takes energy, if it's something you're passionate about, it charges you. It's more of a meditative type state. So finding your passion. The last thing is super important, and that's find ways to raise your resilience level. We have to become more tolerant. We get kicked in the teeth way more often than most people. We have to find ways to raise our resilience level. So we have to become the brain injury warriors that we are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Steve, look, we're looking forward to diving into each one of these 10 bullet points, starting in our next episode, episode 2 here. Like I said before we started this, I'm thinking we're going to parse this in 3. So we'll hit the first 4 or 5 on your list in more detail the next time we talk, and then the next 4 or 5. And if we got to do part 4, we're going to do it, because what you're providing this audience, I think, is just a tremendous amount of input based on your experience. And I know you're going to help some folks out there. You're going to help a lot of folks. And we appreciate you taking the time and sharing this. Love the way you organized your thoughts around these topics. And most of all, I love the way that you've personalized your story and opened your heart to the audience and shared some of the tough things you've been going through, you and your wife and your family. So that takes a lot to do. I know that personally. So I want to thank you.
Yes, I also want to thank you for allowing me to do this. You are in turn helping me raise my resilience levels, and you're helping me learn to tell my story. So you're helping me tick off some boxes as we're doing this, Mike. So
Okay,
I'm
great.
very happy to do it, and
All right.
hope that this helps some.
Absolutely. We got a lot to talk about here. So to the audience, thank you for joining part 1 with Steve Cowherd. I'm hoping you'll join us for the next couple parts. We're going to dive deep into each one of these things that Steve is sharing with us on his lessons learned. So we appreciate your participation in joining us, and we will see you soon at Kev Advotech.